I was about 25, in a rock band, having the best time of my life. I was at a house, and we were all sitting around talking, and the subject got around to ghost stories. And everyone was telling ghost stories, myself included. I thought I was very scientific at the time and very rational, although I hadn't read a great deal of factual science at that age. I was too busy rocking. And I remember late in the evening, the lady whose house it was told us that the room above it had some very strange incidences of paranormal stuff. You know, doors opening, bed sheets flying off beds, that sort of thing. And while we were sat there, there came a moment where the floorboards above creaked or something like that. There was no one else in the house but us. And I remember feeling sick. Everyone in the room went pale, and I was really annoyed with myself for reacting like this. I thought, here I am, rational, but not as rational as I thought, because these stories shouldn't be affecting me. Obviously we got ourselves in the mood to be susceptible to that type of emotional response, and that's what we got. And to try and quantify exactly how afraid this rational guitarist was of going upstairs into the room at that moment when the floorboard creaked, it would have taken £1,500 to get me to go up those stairs, which is about $3,000. So that shows how rational I was. But I do remember from that moment being aware that it wasn't enough to be rational. You had to arm yourself with information and facts and convince yourself completely. Were I in a house now and when ghost stories were being told, if there was any prospect of a test coming up, of going up into a room which was supposedly haunted, I would simply go around to the house and go straight up into the room. I wouldn't sit there and listen to ghost stories for 2 or 3 hours and then try and do it, because you've already switched on your spook radar, and you will feel something. And this got me thinking, where does that feeling come from? And the answer is evolution. If you imagine 2 human beings out in the open, the rain comes down, they go and hide in a cave for shelter, the rain continues, and they end up staying there after dark. And they're sitting down in the cave, sheltering, and behind them they hear a scratching sound, or a sound. One of the humans, because he has the spook gene, takes off like a rocket. I mean, he's gone. There's a cloud of dust behind him. His feet are kicking up dirt as he goes flying out of the cave. The other human being, however, is completely rational. He has the logic gene. So he doesn't move when the bear swats him and knocks his head off from behind. This should be remembered. The reason I'm saying this should be obvious to anyone with an understanding of evolution. But what I'm saying is that the human beings that were totally rational, if there ever were any, but those that didn't have the spooky, something's wrong, I've got to get out of here feeling, those that didn't have that feeling died. They didn't get out of the cave. They didn't get away from the bear. They didn't suddenly bolt at the sound of a twig breaking behind them. They didn't fear the dark, and they died. That's why we all have this feeling. Even the most rational among us will have this this spooky feeling from time to time. So, when you experience something that you might call spiritual, something that you can't explain, the sense of another presence, that's simply because there is at the modern end of a long line of survivors who had the same feeling, and it saved their lives countless times. The human beings that didn't have that feeling are all gone. They all died. So just bear it in mind. I'd also extend the analogy to religion. There was a time in the past when obviously there were very few human beings. The gene pool was very small, and it seems quite reasonable that every once in a while there would be a human being that had to walk across a desert or get across a jungle. His entire tribe had been massacred by the next tribe or by wild predators or something like that, and they had to go a long distance on their own. Now, again, imagine two human beings. One who's completely rational and has no belief in a higher being or a god or anything like that, and one who does have the feeling. The one that doesn't have the spirituality feeling will be walking across a desert on his own, and he'll lose hope fairly quickly. The human being that walks along sensing that something is looking after him, something that's going to care for him and watch over him, that person has a huge evolutionary advantage. They will walk with hope, and they will keep walking. So that there's good and bad points to this. Some of the religious spiritual instincts that we have are evolutionary advantages. That is why the feeling is there. If it wasn't an evolutionary advantage, the gene would have died out. But obviously in the modern age, what was once an evolutionary advantage is now a crippling mode of thought, which is distorting some of the decisions we're making about our leaders, and quite possibly distorting the rational processes going on in the heads of the leaders that we choose. So that's just a quick look at life from the evolutionary viewpoint, and why things which seem in the spiritual realm are still, I'm afraid, firmly locked in science.